Hey guys, Caven from True Champion Gaming here, and we have a deck profile for you, and this is actually a pretty cool one. So we have Spirit of Wind. We are playing Wind Neos Tonoris. So let's go ahead and keep going on it. We have level 1 Tony. You're going to gain taunt until the beginning of your next turn. Not as relevant in this deck as it is, compared to like the Tony ally decks. There's not really that many units that you need to protect early. So unfortunately, usually when you're doing these level 3 Tony decks, the level 1 and level 2 kind of don't give you much of a reward compared to going into something like Lorraine 1 and Merlin 2 and you're playing like Fire Merlin. You get like immediate rewards when doing that, but it's going to pay off. Tonoris Might of Humanity actually can come up. Giving the next attack +3 is pretty relevant because we play a lot of cleaves in here, or even just like doing a single attack can be useful, but we don't run any weapons for early single attacks, so normally it's either going to be wasted or used for a cleave. But once we get to this big boy, that's where the payment finally starts happening. So once you get into Tony level 3, at the beginning of your recollection phase, you can choose to summon one of his tokens. So his 3 stadiums up here. And these are really useful utility pieces. You can either prevent 2 damage, summon a 2/2 token ally, or make a great sword. This is a 3/1 sword that obviously can be very, very helpful as like spot removal or a little bit of damage. So we'll touch more on those token stadiums or domains in a little bit, but let's keep rocking with the material deck. So obviously, this is a competitive deck. It's got backup charger in it. This is a very free +1 from the material deck. You get to draw a card, which is really strong in Grand Archive. All right, this is actually insane. And I actually want to take a moment here too and say big shout out to Kyle. He's a player from our local scene in Ann Arbor, semi-local scene for us. We go out there pretty often. This deck list is pretty based off of a lot of what Kyle's been testing. We've been running this deck, and Kyle's been running this deck through a lot of testing in locals and such. And so yeah, just shout out to him. And man, this card, you guys might not even know what this does, but this is insane. This is a 0-cost shield unit link. So you're going to link this to your champion. Class bonus is if damage would be dealt to linked unit while it's attacking, prevent 3 of that damage. That might not seem that good. However, let's talk about why it's good. So we run 8 cleaves in this deck, and obviously if they're leaving cards standing up, you're going to be taking a lot of damage from retaliation. However, this is a Veiling Breeze-esque effect where every single instance of damage that we be dealt to the linked unit while it's attacking gets 3 damage prevented. So if your opponent has 5 allies on board, most of the time those units are going to be 3 or less attack. If you do a cleave with this prototype type shield linked to your champion, you won't take any of that damage as long as they have only 3 or less attack. So if they have 4 units with 2 attack and 1 unit with 4 attack, and they retaliate all of them, you would only take 1 damage from the 4 damage unit. That is insane, just crazy. Allies are a really important part of the game right now. A lot of decks are running them, and being able to free board wipe with a cleave and not take any damage back is absolutely unreal, and what is honestly one of the biggest parts of this deck. I think it's one of the biggest strengths of this deck, I should say. We also have Terraforming, just a good defensive utility. Like I said, we're really just trying to make it to level 3 and then stabilize at that point. We're also running Temporal Spectrometer. A really nice reason that we can run this is because A, backup charger is out now, so you still have that GCR-esque effect in your deck. And then we also are running Beseech the Winds. So even though it's kind of like taking you a turn away from leveling up into level 3, which is again a really crucial part of this deck, because we run Beseech, you can go Temporal Spectrometer early, keep on putting counters on it, and then once you're level 2, just Beseech into a Tony level 3, and then this should have 3 counters, and you spent 1 card from hand and you spent 1 materialization, but you saved yourself a card overall instead of paying the full 3 for the Tony level 3. So can be pretty nice. Then we have Wayfinder's Map. This is, again, another GCR for our deck, basically. Even if you don't play any domains from your main deck, you can eventually get the 3 token domains with your level 3 and draw a card that way. It can also be nice to play it early if you do have a lot of domains in your hand, but we're only running 5 domains in the main deck, so normally you're just treating this as a late game GCR, basically. And then another super busted Regalia in this deck. I think that the Regalia strength in this deck is more comparable to something like Sylvie, where Sylvie's Regalia are just all super busted. It's all just like crazy effects. Most other decks don't have that much power in the Regalia. However, Alchemical Scripture is going to draw you a card every single turn at the start of your end phase if you have 4 more tokens. Our Tony level 3 is going to just automatically create token domains on its own. These are domains and tokens. So after just a few turns, even if you're not creating tokens in any other means, you have 3 there, and these can create more tokens by themselves. So without needing to draw any main deck cards, you can actually turn this effect online, and you're going to be able to turn it online way faster than waiting all of your turns for your level 3 to effect. So let's talk about a way to make more tokens. Sentinel Fabricator. This is a 0 cost Neo, so you can only do this once you're level 3. You just pay 3, you tap this, and you make a drone token with a buff counter on it, similar to the domain that the level 3 champion brings out. So pretty strong. You can just basically continuously build up board from not using any cards in hand, and that's a really, really good strength. Then our last card in the material deck is Archon Broadsword. This is really great to use with our cleave. Like I said, we run a lot of cleaves that can stop things like Tristan's redirect and stuff like that. And you can get this up really, really high. So it has the Bulwark Sword effect where you have to pay 2 to use it for a swing. But it gets +1 damage for each token you control. And this is basically a token deck. You're going to have a lot of tokens, and you can just do so much damage with the sword. It becomes really, really scary. So let's go ahead and move on to the main deck. So this is not an Eternal Kingdom deck, but we are still going to run some domains in here. We're running 4 Hub of Innovation. And the reason for this is that it's a cantrip, which means that it's going to draw a card to replace itself. So when you play this card, you're not losing out on hand advantage. You're not going to get it right back in hand. It's going to go in memory, but you're only losing out on tempo because you cast this for 3 and all it did was draw you a card in memory. It didn't give you any other effect. But the reason that we play it is so that you can actually use your effects of the domains that you make in the late game. So these domains take 4, 5, and 6 to use their abilities, depending on which one you have out, but they're reduced by 1 for each domain you control. So once you get all 3 of them out, they only cost 1, 2, or 3. And then if you have 1 or 2 of these, you can make most of them free. So big reason to do that is it basically just puts a domain out there. Domains are really hard to interact with, so your opponent's probably not going to be able to clear them out. And then they'll just sit there for the rest of the game until you're finally able to bring out your other domains with your leader ability, and then you can use all those for free. Next up, we have our only other domain in the deck list, which is 1 Oasis Trading Post. This one doesn't draw you a card like Hub of Innovation does. However, it can be a really, really good way to just make tokens or glimpse, or whenever you have just extra mana laying around, it can be a really, really good tool there. Again, we're a token-based deck, so it kind of fits in, but you really don't want to see multiple of those. Then we have 4 Manufacture Sell. So this is basically just for, again, tokens, right? We have a lot of tokens, and drawing a card, making a token for free, it's similar to the Hub of Innovation where it's costing you tempo, but it is gaining you utility and resources for the later game. We do run automatons in here, so you're normally going to want to wait until you have an automaton on board. That way you can actually draw and cantrip itself. And this is a fast speed card as well, so really good for using on your opponent's turn after you held up defensive options but didn't need to use them or something. We're also running a Turbocharge. You do want tokens on your board, but Turbocharge drawing you 2 cards is really strong as well, of course. So just easy way to +1 in there. Then we have 3 Beseech, like I mentioned earlier. Getting to your level 3 is pretty important, and then even once you get to level 3, you have a lot of really good cards in the Regalia deck, like the Alchemical Scripture and everything. So Beseech is very easy to see how it gets you your value back by cheating out an extra materialization. We run 2 Dream Fairy. Allies are just hitting really hard right now. You want to stop a super buffed up early Baby Red Slime, or maybe in the late game they have a 5/5, 7/7, 9/9 Ethereal Slime or something. Can be really helpful for that. Can be really good for using this on like a Korhazi outlook of your opponents, and then that way they can't play it and make their turn unstoppable and stuff. So Dream Fairies are really nice in this deck. You just don't really want to run a 4 of. It gets a little clunky. Then we have 3 Fairy Whispers. We have a pretty decent wind count in this deck. It's higher than normal, I think. Maybe comparable to like how Tristan runs it. But yeah, just obviously good filter card there. Then we have 4 Fabled Whirlwinds. We actually have a pretty good amount of allies in this deck, especially once you get your whole setup going. And just being a floating memory is really relevant. Like I said, we want to get to level 3, so we use a lot of floating. And then we have 4 Hurricane Sweeps. So you don't get the class bonus efficiency. That's really important to note. We are Guardian, not Warrior. But being a cleave is really strong. Like I said, once we go into level 2, you're going to get the +3 attack there. You get a 1 damage from the attack card itself. You can cleave for 4, which is a really, really relevant number. That's usually going to clear off an entire board. And so yeah, it's just a really, really great card. And you can find it early with Fairy Whispers and stuff. Then we have 4 Reclaim. This is just a pretty much auto-include in most wind decks, especially ones that want to level up a lot. So just a good value card there. Now we have 4 Rose. So this is in here for a couple of reasons. Automaton is really good with the Manufacturer's Cell, being able to cantrip with that and then just create those power cells. And then we do create power cells in this deck. So you can occasionally use those to buff her attack. It being a true sight is pretty relevant. You can kill off things like Black Market Broker, maybe a low health Ethereal Slime and stuff like that. Obviously you have to use power cell tokens, so definitely be cautious in that, because like I said, we are a token deck. So those power cell tokens are getting you value even when you're not actively using them. But yeah, changing targets of attacks, this is insanely good against things like Nico, against things like Tristan, especially when they're trying to do like an early slice and dice and stuff. So just a really, really great card in here. And you get all the class bonuses and stuff since it is a Guardian class bonus. Then we have 3 Stifling Trap. Slows down, your opponent's Dream Fairies, your opponent's Dungeon Guides, Storm Slimes, all the stuff that Stifling Trap usually hits. Then we also have 4 Swift Recruit. Like I said, we are a slow level 3 deck. This is just an easy auto-include. It's defense and it's floating memory, so it's giving you everything you want in this deck. Then, of course, we have 4 Valiant Breeze. We run a pretty good amount of wind cards. This is a great defensive option. Then we have 4 Windmill Engineers. Big reason of why Reclaim's in the list. Just an easy cantrip. Always replaces itself as long as you imbue it. And then if you can do something like Reclaim it, it actually turns it into a +1. Really great card to have in wind decks. Then we have 4 Zephyr, which is quite a lot. Most wind decks are not running 4 Zephyr right now, but this is such a utility-based card and can really, really just have good synergy with this deck. It's a great defensive option as well, so we like to have all 4 Zephyrs in there. Then let's talk about some of the Neos cards. So Atmos Armor type Ares. This is one of the new Neos allies. Similar to Cordelia, this one's a UR, Cordelia is an SR. They got pretty hyped around the release of MRC and kind of got nowhere. I think that this card is absolutely busted though. It can create a Atmos Shield. These cards are insane. You actually create 2 of them on summon, sorry. These cards are absolutely insane. It stops non-combat damage by tapping, and then you can also redirect attacks to the Atmos Shield. So whether you're facing down attack damage or spell damage decks, you're going to be able to have defense against either one of those. It's just absolutely insane. These are also tokens, so it's also counting towards your win con. Just really, really good cards there. Cordelia is not in this deck because it just kind of feels like a little bit of a bait card. This giving you immediate defense while giving you tokens is really nice. Cordelia gives you tempo while giving you tokens, and we sacrifice tempo in order to have utility and defense later in this deck, so it just makes sense to run Ares and not Cordelia. And then we have Blade of Creation. So this card is, I thought we ran 4 of it, but apparently we run 3. Blade of Creation is absolutely insane. It costs 1 less for each token you control. This can cost literally 0. A 0 for attack cleave is insane, especially when you remember that we can use something like Archon Broadsword, which if we have 7 tokens out and we're playing it for 0, which is not an impossible thing to do in this deck. The Broadsword itself is like 7 or 9 damage, plus the 4 damage from this. Now you're cleaving for like 13 or something crazy like that. It just gets out of hand really fast. You're gonna clear all of your opponent's Ominous Shadow tokens, their gigantic Lustrous Slimes. You're gonna handle, Majestic Spirits. You're gonna get pretty much anything you need to when you get fully set up with the deck. So let's quickly cover the sideboard. However, this is going to be crafted more to your local meta. So these are more just suggestions on where to start, but I would recommend changing up the sideboard how you see fit. We have 4 Reprogram, just a good generic floating memory, defensive card, and can really help against automaton-based decks. 3 Resolute Stand if you're facing against a lot of aggro. Savage Smash if you really want to do more early game spot removal. It counts as a floating memory, so it can just be a nice 1-for-1 that's going to let you keep on leveling up or put pressure on them. And then Innervate Agility. I'd be a little bit hesitant about this card. Like I said, you really do want to get to level 3 and kind of like stabilize there. However, Innervate Agility can be a really, really important tempo play if your opponent's got like an all-in turn. And also it's important to note that if you de-level from Tony level 3 and then you re-level back up, you can actually pick to create the same obelisk that you created the first time that you brought out Tony level 3. Because it's viewing it as a new instance of a card, you can choose to make all those, which is really, really strong because then even if you didn't play any of your main deck domains, now you're gonna be creating more than 3 with your level 3 by itself. So you'll actually be able to cast all 6 domains eventually and then use their abilities for completely free because the highest cost that they have is 6. So really cool interaction there, and definitely can be nice against like an all-in deck. And then if you're playing against slimes or something else that has a lot of spells, you can use Provoke Obstinance. This will give you Spell Shroud, so it can be really, really handy there. Really relevant in the meta right now. So yeah, that is the list, guys. Honestly, I think it's a really cool list. We are going to be testing a lot more. I actually do think it's competitively viable. So we'd love to see you guys bring this out to your locals. Maybe bring it out to more competitive events than that once you have some reps on it. Maybe you guys make some changes. Definitely let us know what you think in the comments below. If you make any changes and you have a lot of success for it, definitely comment. Let us and the community see where we're getting with this Tony deck. I think Neos Tony is a really, really strong archetype, and it's been getting absolutely no love. So let's change that. Let's bring the big boy out. We'll see you on the next video. Peace.